Hell with Vince McMahon. I don't need him.
Radiation is a curious thing. No one expects what it would bring.
Let's talk about Ring of Honor.
Sure.
How did that come about for you?
Jimmy Jacobs. I was sitting at home at 2 or 3 in the morning, which to those that don't know me is just peak hour for me to be up and doing wrestling work. Got a random text from Jimmy Jacobs. It said, you should really think about hitting up Ring of Honor. They could use you. For a history lesson for those that don't know, Gabe Sapolsky had left his booker in 2008, and he had taken some of his guys with him, and one of them was Lenny Leonard, who was the announcer with Dave Prazak. And I think through most of 2009, it was just Prazak and random wrestler, Prazak and random office guy, doing a lot of the commentary. There really wasn't a lot of stability. But Jacobs hit me up, and then like 20 minutes later, Zach Gowen sends me a text message. So, okay, they're watching Ring of Honor together, and they're thinking about me. So I'm flattered by that. But I told him, I've reached out to Adam Pearce. I haven't gotten a reply. I don't think they're interested. Jimmy Jacobs went out of his way to get a hold of Adam Pearce, get a hold of Kerry Silken, and put me over. Tell them to give me a shot. And a month or two later, I was going out to their offices in Bristol to voice their most recent 2 events, which was an event from Southern California that had Jushin Liger on it, my first time calling a Liger match, and their 8th anniversary, where Seth Rollins won his first world title, beat Austin Aries. So it was right into the frying pan from day one. And I'm always very thankful and appreciative for Jimmy, because Jimmy wasn't even working for Ring of Honor at the time. I think he might have been working with Gabe, so he didn't gain anything from that. There was no reason to do that. He wasn't gaining office points. He wasn't scoring points with me. I mean, even though he was, but there was nothing I could give him, So I always appreciated that. That was very selfless of him, and I've thanked him multiple times since then. I had a good run there, about 9 months. Me and Prazak were doing all the straight to DVDs, and I did a couple of the pay-per-views until they streamlined, and it became Kevin Kelly and Dave, and later Kevin and Nigel. So I just became like the phantom announcer. I came in like once or twice a year when Kevin had off, and just kind of jumped in and did my thing, and just started this past fall. Ring of Honor was in Pittsburgh, Stage AE. I showed up, and I can call the Future of Honor match, and I did that. And I've always had a great relationship with Delirious and guys like that. But I think just me being there, and that's a lesson to all the young kids, show up. You never know what's going to happen. Me being there and me being able to do that match kind of like refueled that spark of like, oh yeah, this guy doesn't suck that bad. And they wanted me to do the Future of Honor stuff, full time since then. And other than the first couple months where we had to get our dates straight, I've done Future of Honor every single week since then, and it's now, as this is being recorded, 9 months later, 10 months later. So I'm very happy there. This has been the longest run I've had there regularly. It's a little weird because I feel like a wrestler where I'm driving 6 hours and then working 8 minutes and then just doing nothing all night, just relaxing and learning and watching the show. So it's weird to go from the 3-4 hour marathon shows to just doing 1 or 2 matches, but I love it too because that gives me a chance to focus on just those guys. What's your story? What are you doing? And all I have to think about is that. So meanwhile, where Ian Riccaboni was doing everything, he obviously is focusing on TV, pay-per-views, the top guys. The future match is not going to slip through the cracks necessarily, but it's not going to get the same time and attention. But I'm able to come in and kind of cultivate that and make that my own. And I've got J-Rock next to me, which is an experience in itself. But it's something that I enjoy and I embrace, and whenever more opportunity comes, I'll be ready for it. I'll be there.
January 2016, you came out of the closet, which first off I think is an interesting expression to begin with. But the question that I would have is, when I read the information that followed up, it was generally very positive. Now, of course, You're always going to have a few idiots that have smart remarks, but we're not going to worry about those folks. My question would be is, when you decided to announce who you were as a person, were there any genuine friends or people that you thought a lot of that you lost along the way because of your decision to announce who you really are?
No, there really wasn't. It was one of those things I knew it would be welcomed for, by and large. I knew it would be something that would be met with support and love and positivity. But when you're a chronic overthinker, your brain has ways of convincing you that reality isn't reality. And it has a way of creating problems that aren't really there and just blowing them up until it can literally alter your mood, alter your attitude, and make you want to shut off from the world. So I was still very, very nervous about doing it. I remember it was literally an all-day decision. Do I click post? Do I not click post? It was rough. Yeah, I honestly don't think that there was anything. I mean, the people close enough to me already kind of knew, and I had told probably, I don't know, half a dozen or a dozen people in confidence. So to a lot of people, I don't think it was a surprise. And to the people that weren't super close with me, I think it was just, okay, what's next? I don't. Nobody really made a big deal about it in a good way. It was met with a lot of uproar and fanfare that day, but like a couple days later, it's back to business, back to normal. So I can honestly say, along with getting into the business, it's one of the greatest things I've ever done.
My next question is sort of twofold as it relates to that. So in your initial post, you had mentioned that you were somebody that grew up with a lot of anxiety and depression. So what advice would you give to someone that A, is struggling with coming out of the closet, and B, separately, someone who is struggling with anxiety and depression? What kind of advice, who's someone who's dealt with that and is now, certainly a full-grown adult, sort of, sure, we're all in wrestling, so we're not completely grown.
Right.
But what kind of advice would you give to those folks?
I mean, it's cliche, but it gets better. And when you're a kid, you're in the high school bubble, and like that acceptance and how your image means so much in so many different ways. And kids are cruel. Kids are judgmental because all kids are insecure, just like all wrestlers are insecure. There's a lot of parallels there. But it's one of those things where everything you worry about as a kid eventually is not going to matter. Once you get in the real world and you deal with actual problems and deal with actual people you want to be around, that's what matters. And as far as guys struggling or girls struggling with accepting themselves or being public or coming out, like there's no time limit. Like there's no right way to do it. There's no right time to do it. Everybody's different with their home situation, their family situation, their job situation, their culture, their religion. There's so many X factors that go into it. And in a lot of those ways, I was lucky where most of the problems was just getting over the hurdles in my own head. But some people just can't socially or culturally. They'll be disowned by their family, and that's so upsetting to me. But don't do it till you're ready and until you feel confident, because this is about you and it's about your happiness. And if you need someone to talk to, there's people, whether it's people in your life or people who have gone through similar situations like me who can help you and talk you through it. And I've had a number of people reach out to me privately since, like, hey, I feel the same way and I'm not ready to come forward yet, but I think it's very brave what you're doing. Or, people that just tell me that I was part of what influenced them to come forward and come out. That's very humbling to me. And I never intended to do that. I did it for my own personal happiness because, I turned 30 and I realized I still wasn't really truly being myself. And whenever both numbers in your age change, you do a lot of internal thought, So
You think 30-something. Wait till you hit 40.
Oh, I'm in no hurry, trust me.
Yeah.
I don't think I can top the 30 announcement, though. But yeah, it's something where everybody's got to have that moment in their own heart or mind where it clicks, where, you know what, being happy, being myself, being independent, living life my way is much more important than what anybody else is going to think or anywhere else someone's going to judge me, or if I lose friends or if I lose jobs or opportunities. That's their problem. That's on them, because I'm on the right side of history. And, I'm jealous today because I talk to these young kids who are maybe bisexual or, have bisexual people in their lives or gay people in their lives. Like, I've never seen anyone discriminated against at school. I've never seen anybody. And of course, it's still out there and you're going to have it. But for people to live that openly and that accepted, growing up like this in the 90s, I never thought that could have been possible. So it's so great to see the strides that have been made, but there's still a long way to go. And every year that goes by, it gets a little bit easier. anxiety and depression in general, honestly, just keep your mind occupied. Don't overthink. Booking wrestling is sometimes therapy to me because I can play over one of those problems in my mind all day instead of a life problem. You know, again, the mind has a way of making things a lot worse than it actually is. And, you know, the more you think about something, the bigger it gets, and the more you fill in blanks with whatever your own little worries or insecurities are instead of reality. And thankfully, I've been able to surround myself with people now who are very reassuring and very comforting, and they're able to suppress a lot of that overthinking, and they're able to understand me because they're overthinkers as well. You know, find like-minded people. You know, don't find the guy that's gonna get his rocks off putting you down or whatever. Find guys that understand, and friends that understand, you know, what you're going through, and you can relate to each other a lot better and help each other out.
Generally, this is a wrestling interview, so let's jump back into the wrestling.
I've heard of wrestling, yeah.
Let's say at the end of the show tonight, some 17-year-old kid walks up to you and he says, you know, announcing sounds amazing. It's what I've wanted to do since I was a little kid. What kind of advice would you give them on how to get into the announcing game?
It's tough because there's no school. There's no way to do it. I was very thankful and fortunate that things worked out for me the way they did. I mean, the best way to do it is, again, show up. You know, show up and whatever grunt work is needed, if posters need hung, if you need to run and get people lunch, if you're just, you know, pulling cord during the show, whatever you got to do, be there and do it. And that way you have a reputation as being dependable. And then people will realize if there's a spot open, all right, this guy's not polished, he's not proven, but he's got an okay head on his shoulders, he's a good worker, we can at least give it a shot. You know, and that was me. That was months of working on the website or months of doing whatever I was doing just to keep myself out there and show I at least had a basic understanding of what we're doing. And it built from there. But, yeah, you can't expect to just walk in the front door and get what you want right away. But if you want it bad enough and you're patient, it could happen. And also be ready for rejection, because wrestling is a series of rejections, occasionally interrupted by work. And especially for us that are kind of on the frills, us announcers and referees and managers and stuff like that. Because unfortunately, a lot of promoters will pinch pennies and put their buddy from college in, or put this guy that's really funny at a party in, or whatever the case is. And unfortunately, it shows in the work. And I've had people balk about, you know, paying announcers to come in. It doesn't even matter the amount, just paying announcers in general. And that's unfortunate. And be ready for a lot of that, because you're never going to be a draw. You're never going to be the one they come to pay to see. So you have to kind of humble yourself and realize, all right, this is my ceiling. I need to find other ways to create revenue. I have about 6 or 7 different ways of generating revenue now through wrestling. None of them work well, but altogether, you know, I'm on the low side of okay.
What would be, you're still a young man. What would be your ultimate goal as far as in the wrestling business?
Ultimate goal is to make as much money as possible while enjoying every minute of it. I think that goes hand in hand. I would not want an extremely well-paying job that I hated, and I wouldn't want to necessarily do this stuff for free after 15 years of doing it. But wherever that takes me, if that takes me to overseas, if it takes me to another company, if it's just me staying in Ring of Honor and helping them grow, I would welcome the opportunity to do that, especially with, you know, news of ROH going to Madison Square Garden, and 2017 being their biggest business year ever. 2018 is on pace to top that. I hope that I'll have a home in Ring of Honor for a long time. They were the first national promotion to give me a shot. If that's not in the cards for whatever reason, then hopefully wherever I end up, I'll be able to be happy and just be productive and contribute. You know, I'm not that kind of guy that's WWE or bust. Because when I got in, WWE was not hiring wrestling announcers. They were hiring guys that had never done wrestling and teaching them wrestling. So when I started, that wasn't a realistic goal. You know, I would never rule it out, but it wasn't a realistic goal. And it may still not be, you know, and that's fine. Because I love what I'm doing now. I'm busy every weekend, love who I'm working with, and the less you plan for, the less disappointment you'll get in the future, I guess. So I'm just riding that wave, and hopefully I'll be a part of Ring of Honor for a very, very long time. And like I said, if not, wherever I end up next, just do the best I can to contribute.
Boy, we've covered a lot.
Ton.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap things up?
Man. Any fans out there, I want to thank you for any support you have given to not just me, but the business as a whole, whether it's buying a ticket, buying a DVD, merchandise, whatever the case is. Without you guys, there is no us. So, every bit you do, support what you like. Don't support what you don't like. Find your niche, because there's something out there for everybody. And beyond that, I just want to thank everybody that I have worked with over the years. Be it a wrestler, be it a promoter, anybody that gave me a shot, especially when I was young. I want to thank the core of IWC from when I started. Guys like Shirley Doe, Super Hentai, Glenn Spector, Chuck Roberts, of course Norm Connors, Jeff Gorman, and Jeff could have cut my legs off from day one if he wanted to, because I wasn't good, I wasn't tested, I was nobody. But he embraced me, he welcomed me with open arms, and he helped me a lot. He treated me better than I would treat me today if somebody came, and I can be completely honest saying that. But all those guys, Jake Garrett, Chuck Roberts, Chris Keeley-Capella, of course, Norm Connors is the promoter. All those guys welcomed a socially awkward, insecure 17-year-old kid in their locker room, and I'm sure there was a lot of questions. I'm sure there was a lot of what's he doing here. I'm sure there was a lot of time it took me to prove myself. And if any one of them would have just kicked me in the ass and sent me on my way, who knows where I would have ended up. But because they were patient and because they were to some degree understanding, helpful, rides to shows, advice, whatever it was, and giving me the time to grow into myself, all the cool stuff I've done since then, internationally, bigger promotions, all the hats I've worn in wrestling. If it's not for those guys letting me into their world, I don't do that. And I've never had a chance to really publicly acknowledge all that, but I do appreciate all that, and I was, too quiet of a kid to probably say it back then as much as I should have, but I'm appreciative of everybody in my journey, and especially them, because without that foundation, the house will crumble. But and thank you for the platform. This has been fun. I'd also like to say I hate Chris Taylor. That's how you get attention doing these, right?
Right.
No, I love Chris. Chris has been my favorite Kato interview so far.
Good. Well, I'm glad somebody's watching them.
Yeah, it's just me clicking refresh over.
Good.
But no, I've been a part of some of the dark days of Chris and some of the pep talks and stuff like that, and to see how happy and positive he is now and how well he carries himself and tells his story compared to years ago, it's a beautiful thing. And Chris is another great example of just somebody that can turn their life around. So I'll give a shout out to him too, even though I don't think he name dropped me in his interview, but I'm going to name drop him.
Maybe not.
So he feels guilty now, so he has to do another one.
Maybe I can dub Chris Taylor when you're saying that with another name. I'm trying to think maybe somebody that would go the other way from Chris Taylor. No, we won't do that. So hey, Joe, I really appreciate it. This has been great. We're going to close on this. Guys, girls, please stop having shitty matches. You are ruining my life.